Joshua, shall we start recording? Beautiful. Hi, everyone. Depending on where in the world you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. It is Monday, July 27th, 2020, and we're about to participate in Lift Every Voice and Sing, presented by Titus Underwood, the remarkable principal oboist of the Nashville Symphony, graduate of Cleveland Institute of Music and the Juilliard School, and most recently, Sphinx Medal of Excellence Award winner, which involves a performance upcoming at the Supreme Court and an award of a $50,000 grant. My name is Billy Short. I'm the bassoon at large member of the IDRS Executive Committee, and I'll be moderating this Q&A. You'll see that you can write in questions live down at the bottom of the screen. It says Q&A, and I will be passing these along to Titus during our discussion. And with that, I'd like to pass things over to Titus. Titus, thank you so much for being here. Just to start with, I'd love to hear about sort of what was the original impetus behind creating this fantastic video.
So thank you so much, Billy, for the introduction. And I mean, it's really funny. We met online, heard about each other, but then met online a few days ago. So it's interesting how this world is working now. But yes, how it started out, a lot of people didn't know the first thing, how it came together was as soon as things shut down, everyone on there are friends of mine. So I called everyone up. I said, hey, do you guys want to do Strauss Serenade? Because, and we can just kind of throw it together. It's on IMSLP. And the thought came up, I said, we can do also an arrangement of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And at that time, we didn't have a composer on the docket for it, and I had someone in mind, but that's how that set up the four horns, the two bassoons, contrabassoons. So people are like, where does this instrumentation come from? But that came from simply because we were going to do the Strauss E-flat Serenade. That was the first thing that we didn't release because, the timing came about and then, everything was piling up. So, and then after we recorded the Strauss, which we were going to release that week, Anthony Parther, who's the contrabassoon, said, hey, he texted me and said, hey, Titus, I think we should release the Lift Every Voice and Sing first. And I was like, I totally think so. I was thinking about the same thing. And we had already had it recorded. It was in a Dropbox. So we had recorded the Strauss and we recorded the Lift Every Voice and Sing. So we had coordinated everything. Everything was put together. And at that time, we were just going to release just the Lift Every Voice and Sing, just as like one of the videos that people put up. And it's just, this person's highlighted during this time, this person highlighted during this time. And I want to also highlight the composer, the lovely composer. He's a great friend of mine, Fredo, writes amazing music. He's the person who arranged it for us because I called him and I said, hey, I need this Lift Every Voice and Sing. And when he wrote it, the middle section where the pictures and everything comes in, that was the first rendition he sent me. So I was like, oh, this is really dark sounding. Like, this is weird. This is like Lift Every Voice and Sing. This is triumphant. But then, but there are very, very vivid lyrics in there that talk about the hardships of being Black in America. And, because the poem was written in 1899. So imagine the lyrics that are written. Then it was set to music by his brother years later, which became the Negro National Anthem. But after that, I said, hey, can you meet us in the middle? Because this is going to be on social media. Because you write an anthem and then write this kind of development section. He said, okay, cool. So he got back to me, and then there was the anthem at the beginning, this development section, and then like this triumphant ending. And I was like, this is amazing. But then it ended really quietly with these, where people say at the end of the video, it says Black Lives Matter. But that was just the piece. That wasn't coordinated or anything. And I was like, what is this ending? Do we need to chop the ending off, or do we keep the ending there? So I was like, okay, let's keep it there. So we all fast forward. We recorded all of it. George Floyd happened, Breonna Taylor, all these things happened, Ahmaud Arbery. And I called my colleagues and I said, hey, we're going to release this first. And I said, I have a vision for this. I think I know this. There's a story that needs to be told with this. So then I started compiling all these photographs together. And then I started kind of writing down how I wanted it to look. And I contacted my friend Enrico, who's the person who kind of put everything physically together. And we were looking at it, how it looks, the scales of gray, the colors, all this stuff. And then from there, I texted everyone a picture of them looking up, video of them looking up into the screen. So can everyone just send me a video of them looking up in the screen? And like, what is this for? What part of the video does this go in? This looks funny. I was like, just send me the video. So they sent me the video, and I was like, this is gonna be for credits. So we put the video together, and it looks beautiful because there was more than one rendition that came together, but this was the one that spoke to us the most, that we released. And we were firstly just wanted to put it together, say there isn't much Black representation in classical music. We want to show that we're out there, we're playing together. That was the first intent. And then after all these things happened, we said, you know what, we need to say something with this story. There's a story that needs to be told. We're also connected to that community, and we're tethered to that. So it isn't like we're over here in the classical music world and then that's happening over there, and we're kind of in our ivory towers and we don't have anything to do with what's going on, or we don't speak on anything that's going on. And we thought it would be our social responsibility to collectively come together as a unified voice and be a voice of protest, a voice of strength, and of unity. And that's pretty much how this thing kind of came about.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Titus. Everyone, please do chime in anytime with your questions via that Q&A function. For right now, Titus, I'd love to follow up on a couple of things that you said. You know, you touched briefly on sort of the significance of this particular piece of music, of Lift Every Voice and Sing. You know, particularly for those attending from outside the United States, or who aren't as familiar with you know, how this music sort of, you know, permeates and inspires the Black community. Could you speak a little bit more to that, about the significance of this particular musical selection?
Sure. So Lift Every Voice and Sing is a very common anthem in Black Americans' households. It is known as the Negro National Anthem. You know, if you're at a function and this song comes up, you know, people stand up and sing the song. And, you know, I can give you a background to it. So Lift Every Voice and Sing is a poem written in 1899 by NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson, and later set to music by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. The poem would later become what is known as the Negro or Black National Anthem. And this is something that, you know, has historically been in the Black community for many, many years. So since 1899. So this is over a century of this song being there. So the tune, what I found very interesting from some of the comments of people reaching out to me, some people didn't even know the song. They didn't know what it was. I mean, a lot of people in the Black community is like, oh yeah, Lift Their Voice and Sing, because I know what that is. But a lot of people from different backgrounds didn't necessarily know of the song or the significance of the song. But that was the interesting part I found about it, is that the music was so incredibly powerful that went along with the narrative that was there. Even though some people didn't know, the music just reached them. And I thought there was immense power in that there were many layers of experiences happening while they were watching that. So not only is it just the power of the music, but it's also on a deeper level for people to understand the significance of this anthem that strikes even deeper chords. So I love the layered responses that came from that.
That's fantastic. And that sort of segues, I think, beautifully into my other question, which is that you said a couple of times that you know, there's a story that needs to be told. And for me in particular, you know, I found it incredibly powerful, this juxtaposition of fantastic music making and, you know, sort of images of the civil rights movements over the decades, of leaders of the Black community over the decades. What exactly was the story you were telling? What was the significance to you of sort of juxtaposing these different images and these different people?
So what's really interesting about it is there are a lot of more than one juxtaposition that's going on in there. So you have these Black classical musicians from different places, right? And then on top of that, you have the civil rights movement that's going on in the 60s and throughout just the civil rights era. And then on top of that, you have the modern day Black Lives Matter movement that's happening on with protests that happen. So it's all in scales of gray. And that was done on purpose to show, is this, when was this? Is this now? Is this then? Why is this still going on? Are we still in a civil rights era? Is that a legitimate thing to say? So, there was a lot to unpack there, and a lot of times being in classical music for, I mean, a lot of us, even from different backgrounds, there's kind of an idolization that happens once you're in a gig. When you're in the gig and people hear your name and they hear you have this principle here, this principle there, or whatever the case may be, there can be that. But also, there are younger Black musicians who are looking for us to say something, to advocate, to be in these spaces. And I know I was looking for that when I was younger. Is sometimes that can be very difficult, if you're dealing with challenges or something comes up and you don't have that. So there were the multiple things where it was, we are here and we're playing. We stand in solidarity with this. We are tired of seeing these images over and over and over again. How can we move society forward that we're not in this place anymore? How can we deal with this head on? These images look very, very similar? Why are we still in this place? I mean, this was in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and now we're in 2020, supposed to be in a quarantine with a pandemic. And I say that there's two things happening at the same time. There's a pandemic and there's protests. These are simultaneously happening. So we want to highlight, even through the trauma of the world going through this pandemic, there's even more layers of trauma that are happening in the Black community. And how can those things be addressed within our world, within classical music? Because we're talking about social distancing and how everyone gets there safely back on stage. But how can we talk about things that is particular to a community that has built a lot here in this land in America, in which people benefit from? How can this be addressed head on? How can we bring this conversation about? And what can we do in our music space? Because that's the best way we know how to protest, is through our art, right? I mean, there's this saying from Louis Armstrong. He was talking about, people used to critique him about him not protesting. And he once said, my protest is through my horn. Like, I can walk on the streets, I can do that, but someone hits me in my face doing something, someone in opposition of me, how would I then be able to be a voice in protest? And not saying that we're not, and some of us have been boots on the ground walking out there, and there is a bigger critical mass out there. I mean, when Louis Armstrong was there wasn't as many people as there are, like, just on a global scale responding. So, I do think that through art, many things and interesting things can be brought to the forefront for this space. And those were the many stories that we were telling within that, to show that we are all, it's all one thing. We're all connected. It's all there. We came from that. And also this anthem, it's a part of our natural cultural expression as well. So there's so many layers to those things. Us looking up, looking into the screen, not down, but looking up, and freedom and all these things, and like stepping into that truth, so yeah, there are lots of many unpacking things to go into with that.
That's fantastic. We've gotten a couple of posts in the Q&A. Sarah from Spain says, "Thank you for this video. I found this very moving. Such a great way to speak out to the whole world." And an anonymous attendee asks, how can we get this into the experience of young people, not only to get the message of the anthem out, but also to get young Black people involved in classical music? Okay,
well, that's a great question. I mean, that's a very, very broad one. I'm gonna try to hone in on it. I grew up with public school. I grew up being able to walk into, a room and they say, what instrument you want to play? And it was there. Like I literally walked into the room, I signed up for band, and my band, I told them I want to play the oboe. It was like, yes, we have an oboe player. So, you know, I didn't need to be converted from the clarinet, from the saxophone, or from the flute. I just walked in there to play the oboe because my sister told me to play the oboe. And that, I mean, I think bigger than ever in your local school district, see who's over that, see what music programs are there, local voting to see what's going on as far as programs, where the funds going into these schools, make sure that the funds are going into the schools where Black kids are, to make sure that the funding is there, whether it's a church program that can put a little bit together. I'm also working with a couple churches in Nashville to see if we can get some instruments together to have kids playing instruments at a very young age. And I think what's also important, especially for young Black kids in classical music specifically, is to teach them about Black composers. I mean, I think it was a big part of my upbringing, just knowing where this history and everything comes from. So it was very natural for me to be in it. So say for instance, for a little Black girl, the first composer she learns about is a Florence Price, and you talk to her about that, you know, and not saying that you shield them from a Mozart or a Bach or, you know, a Chevalier Saint George. He and Mozart were writing at the same time, so he can be brought up, and then you can bring up everyone else, William Grant Still and all these other composers that are there. Let them know that they're a part of this art form as well, and that would spark the interest. I always talk to people about, you know, there's that whole discussion, it's Beethoven Black, is he not, this thing that's going on in the hidden Twitter, but I ask people, say for instance, if he isn't or he is, just play with that idea, right? The fact that the response of it, of someone saying, oh, I'm a part of that, that is the key thing that was focused on, whether it's true or it's not, right? But that's to be furthered, that's a whole nother thing. But the main thing I want to show people is that you have been a part of this art form, and I always have a joke about it. I say literally the sound of oboes, which comes from grenadilla wood from Africa. I always say that's the African sound, right? The most powerful wood you can use to make a beautiful sound comes from Africa. So I'm like, this thing is more interwoven than we think it is, where there's instrument manufacturing, where there's rhythms and harmonies. It's not in a vacuum. No culture happens in a vacuum. So there is a story to be told. There's connectivity for these kids to be a part of and show that they're a part of it. And I think that will spark the interest, because I've seen more interest of children when they see themselves presented in this art form. And it's not like something they need to be a part of, or that they can't be a part of, or they're ostracized. When they feel that they are contributors to the culture, I think the interest goes up.
Fantastic. An anonymous attendee points out Jessica Wilkins is doing a phenomenal job of introducing the quality of Black composers and performers. She's providing excellent history and proper context in a simple, matter-of-fact way. Thank you to the anonymous attendee who posted that. Gina Seraphin says, thank you for this video. In your opinion, what role has behind the screen auditions played in opening up opportunities for musicians in American orchestras?
We're getting into the screens now. Okay, I have to throw something out there. Most American orchestras have not had screens up. Let's just throw that out there. The screens have been up, but they have come down in the finals. So how true are screened auditions? So I was in a lot of finals of a lot of auditions, and the only audition in which the screen was completely up was in Nashville that I made a final of. So I can't say. I was speaking to someone, they said I will always have, to one of my friends who's made, I mean, she's made a ton of finals. She's a Black flautist, and she's still freelance. I mean, you name the orchestra, she's been in the final. And she said to me, I just have unanswered questions because the screen hasn't been up the whole time. And that's the bigger thing. I can't say for sure this what it is. I can't say for sure that it isn't. But I have unanswered questions, and I need the screen to be up. I've seen what the Met has done for many Black artists who have launched their careers out of the Met. But that's the only audition where it has been completely screened. No trial weeks. You're in there. You're in the job. You know, there is someone who will be picked. You know, the musicians are the primary people who are in there. Music director has one vote. You know, like this is a true democratic process that respects the process of the audition. So I do think that we haven't really seen what the result is, to be honest. So that's something that that needs to be brought up, because I know there are articles that are coming out about we need in-screen auditions, all this stuff. And that's a whole nother topic of things. But if I'm specifically addressing the screen, there hasn't been a true conversation about the screen being fully up, because most American orchestras, I would say about probably 99% of them, have not conformed to having the screen up. And the thing that I hear about it is we do things a certain way. We want to see the candidate. I think I call that states' rights, in my opinion. I say that's states' rights. And some things need to be federally changed across the country, where every person who comes, if we're creating this pipeline, right? We have like NOS through Sphinx, where we do these audition intensives, and you have where people have assistance to go to auditions. I say that's like a pipeline to nowhere. It just goes into nowhere. The system in which people are trained have to have an on-ramp into a fair system. So the conversation that needs to be had is that in 2020, we're still talking about a screen. And the Met's been doing this since the 70s. So if you really think about that, the screen isn't really this like mind-blowing epiphany that people are making it out to be, because it has not been respected. So once we have an honest conversation about that, and I think musicians, we need to own that. We need to own how we've been complicit in the system. Because a lot of times, like if there's conflict, there's all this against management, against union, all this stuff. But there's some things that musicians, we need to be held accountable for. And that screen is definitely one of them. So let's have that conversation. Let's, if you want to have, if you're going to say a screen, put it all the way up to the end, no questions asked.
Fantastic. Kristen Jensen says, thank you, Titus, for this beautiful video. The music and message are moving and essential. I appreciate your providing an articulate context too. Leah Uribe says, Titus, thank you so much for your advocacy. Non-BIPOC colleagues ask all the time for suggested actions they can take towards social and racial justice in our profession. What do you suggest they do?
I think, I mean, one thing, immediate thing that people can do, I say, play Black composers. Like, learn Black repertoire and make that a part of, if it, you know, buy music off of Black composers, you know, support them. You know, if you know someone who wants to do some sort of commission work, you know, if you, or you know someone who's a donor, have someone commission a work by a Black composer. I do think that the canon can be filled out. I think that these need to be led to action items. What does that look like within the organization, right? Be an advocate for Black people. And the reason why I say specifically for Black people, because this is the Black Lives Matter movement. And I always say this is not that we're not in solidarity with other peoples of color within this sphere or within this atmosphere, but I like to be anchored in the specificity of Black people. And the reason I like to be anchored in that specificity of Black people, because especially people that are descendants of slaves in this country, if I'm addressing North American specific issues, we have to talk about the specificity of the descendants of slaves in this country who built that capital in which people come and migrate to and benefit from today. So that's why I say let's be anchored in that, because it said this was the white founding, this is the colored founding, which was AKA the Black people that were there. You know, Black people can't go here, we can't go there. This education thing, there was slavery that happened, and and dive deeper into the historical context, which then gives you more conviction about your action. Because it's one thing to ask, what can I do? But I always encourage people to read books like Where Do We Go From Here by Martin Luther King's very last book. You know, I'm not talking about before that. I'm talking about 2 years after I Have a Dream. Because people are like, I have a dream, and then he died. No, there's a reason why he became problematic for people. Read that last book. Read New Jim Crow. Read Souls of Black Folks. Read When Affirmative Action Was Right. Read The Color of Law. Read all these books, and then that will bring you to a better place of action item, what to do. Read about what was going on when Beethoven wrote his Third Symphony. What was simultaneously happening in America or globally, you know, as far as the slave trade is concerned, when Mozart wrote his 40th Symphony. What is happening at the exact time at Mendelssohn III or the Ring Cycle? Or, you know, even we can say what Copeland is writing for the common man. Who is the common man? What is this? So there are a lot of things that we can talk about, the whole picture and what is happening as far as Western classical music, what is happening in the world, where's the capital coming from, where are the instruments being built from, where does the wood come from, where's the manufacturing, where's the wealth, how does this thing come together? It's such an art form where we have these halls that are beautiful and built where we culturally affirm this music. I really want us to dive into that. And then after we go there, we'll be on the same page as far as what should we do, and then we can come with a better answer rather than me saying, go out here and do this. The immediate thing is play black music. I would advocate for that all day. Play more black composers, learn that, get repertoire in your system, be able to rattle off of black composers' pieces as much as you can rattle off a Vivaldi concerto or the Mozart concerto. I know the Mozart concerto is on every audition. We all hate it at this point. But the thing is, I think learn that, get that in your system just as much, but even further, dig deeper into the historical context of why this is still a problem and why we need to move forward as a society.
Fantastic. Skipping chronologically a bit the order of the questions, just because this one is a perfect follow-up to that. How should we perform music by Black composers without sort of being unintentionally racist and without tokenizing?
Okay. I don't think because you're playing a Black composer that you're tokenized. I mean, when someone says we're doing a French program, is that tokenizing? When someone says we're going to play Italian opera, is that tokenizing or racist? I mean, if someone says we're going to do German music, German romanticism, let's get into Strauss and Brahms. I mean, people have nationalized a lot of this music even more than the composers would even like it. Brahms was like, I like this music. And I like to write it, and I write beautiful music, and then people are like, he's the German this. And then people categorize these people. And the reason why I say play Black composers is because there's a huge diasporic canon of Black classical music. It's not just Black Americans, it's people in the Caribbean. There are more Black people in South America than there are in North America. Like, really think about this. There are 220 million people in just the country of Nigeria. So think about how many Black people. I think it's like 1.8 billion on the planet. So just like we play the European diasporic canon, whether that is Italian music, which is different from German music, which is different from English music, which is different from, American music that, from European descent, so there's we are educated in the European diasporic music canon. So the same thing with Black music, you can do the same thing and not feel like it's tokenism or not feel like, I'm just doing it just because. But if that is the reason why you're doing it, then good. You are doing good because it's not about it. I don't think I think racist is a different thing than playing or championing someone's music from a specific place. So, the Minnesota Orchestra plays music, Finnish music all the time. They're constantly playing Sibelius. They're known as like a Finnish, symphony orchestra in a lot of ways. Is that racist? I think that, Osmo Voska likes to champion the music of his, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And even if I was a person from a different background, I can champion the music of someone else. So no, by all means, please play the music and represent it with pride like we do everything else, because that's never a question when it comes up for other places and where their music comes from.
Awesome. And an anonymous attendee says, love Titus's answer to tokenization. Fair is fair as long as it remains fair. Focus on quality and expand repertoire. Allow freedom to choose without judgment. Sarah Roper asks, could you tell us more about the Sphinx Organization?
Okay. So the Sphinx Organization is an organization, for Black and Brown represented people within the field. It's primarily, it's turned into a lot of things. Aaron Dorkin is the person who founded it, and Alpha Dorkin is the person who's over it now. And they do a myriad of things. So, you can look it up. I think it's sphinxmusic.org. And it's primarily a strings competition where people go there like any other strings competition with, Queen Elizabeth or something like that, but it's specifically for Black and Brown people. And then also there's an orchestra that's attached. They have the Sphinx Virtuosi, which is Black and Brown string players touring, playing music. They also hold audition intensives for all instruments. So I'm a part of that faculty that's there that helps train people for auditions. both Black and brown people who want to be in the field, and they provide also audition assistance where it helps people to travel to places. So there are a lot of things. It's kind of like a hub. It's a think tank. There's a conference that happens every year where people speak on issues as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion at the organization. So I would say check them out. I think it's sphinxmusic.org, and they have a lot of their things on the website, and they do a ton of things, and they're advocating in a lot of ways that are very, very effective within the field. So I think all the things that they've been doing.
That's fantastic. If you'll just indulge me, Josh, please speak up if we don't have time. But I actually have one more question that I really wanted to throw in there. So something that you've touched on that I've personally been spending a lot of time thinking about is the issue of representation, of seeing people who look like you, and it's something that I took for granted for a long time until I started watching movies or seeing TV shows or something where at a certain point I'm like, wait a second, I haven't seen a single white person in this entire movie. And I realized at a sort of fundamental level how unusual that was for me. And on the flip side, how meaningful it must be to someone who's not used to seeing, an entire cast made up of people who look like them. And so I wonder if you could just talk from your perspective about, why it is so important for young people to see representation by people who look like them, who have similar backgrounds to them. And what does it feel to now be one of those people that young people, look up to and say, that's what I want to do. And the fact that he's done that means that maybe I can too.
All right. So I think representation is huge. I think representation is absolutely, it's a very important issue. But I even want to bring up an even deeper level as far as representation is concerned. I say representation without cultural representation is not really valuable. Like, I can be on the stage, I can be the Black person on the stage, my more melanated skin and thicker hair, whatever, can be on the stage, but if I'm not culturally affirmed in any way, if I'm not culturally affirmed in that space, if I know that I have been a contributor, or my people have been contributor to this culture, then it doesn't really land as hard. It's not saying that someone seeing me on the stage doesn't have significance. It's not saying that, the little Black child is just, oh man, I want to be like him when I grow up. That would be great. But it would even be great if that person can also hear the music that comes from there. They can hear the voice that's there. Because there's two things we have to think about what happens in a classical music concert. There is just the music, just the sounds put together, emotionally moving people. Like, that's a powerful experience. And a lot of us miss just being in that wave of sound. That's the thing that kind of hurts us the most in this quarantine, is that we can't be in this wave of sound that we're addicted to. We love it, the nuance, the, playing with another person and communicating. But there's another thing that happens at a classical music concert. There's cultural affirmation. People see themselves in what's there. And I say people build halls, they pay people salaries to culturally affirm this. They build endowments to say, we think that this is important. We're going to put this hall in downtown or in Lincoln Center, in the best part of real estate, and we're going to continue to culturally affirm what we find important. But if I'm not there, then is it important? So if I'm there, I think it also should be cultured there. I say bring the team, bring the culture. And it also makes the organization stronger. It actually makes the music making better, because you have so many perspectives and thoughts and things that come into a pot that makes the overall product better. So it's not just about just the representation, but what type of representations are there? Music, culture, voices at the table. And also the playing piece, all of it, from top to bottom, from the board to the management, not just the stage, but who's running things. Do we have enough voices that are different within the space to make it stronger? So yes, I do think that it's very, very important, but I also advocate that I want more than just me on the stage. It would be nice to have, a few other people. And I remember someone said to me, it's the norm for me not to have another Black colleague. Like, that's the normal. for me to be the person. And then if that's the case, you know, those are things, what is the best way to address those issues that are there? So.
Terrific. And we're okay for time. So just to revisit the question of, you know, what has your experience been like, sort of ascending to this place where you are now, you know, someone that people look up to, that people look to as representative of this representation, of this affirmation that you're talking about?
Okay, what it has been for me personally, I mean, it's, if I'm being completely honest, it was a rocky road for me in the field. And that's after, you know, I studied with John Mack his last 2 years, and God rest his soul, one of my idols and mentors, and Frank Rosenwine, who's still a mentor to me and friend now. It's kind of weird to just call him Frank now, and Elaine Duvas, who's a huge mentor of me, and Ann Gabriel, who's in Los Angeles. I mean, there's so many people. And Joe Robinson from you know, Bob Afterhope. There's been so many, in Alan Vogel. I've had a lot of Pedro Diaz and Nathan Hughes, and you know, I've had a lot of people in the pot when it comes to like influence, and people who have lifted me up, have advocated for me. But the hardest thing was, I started to realize that, you know, saying like 15 finals later in auditions, I wasn't at the place where a lot of my colleagues were. You know, and it's common for people to hit glass ceilings in this field. It's hard for anybody in this field. I'm not going to even front. There, it's hard, no matter what culture you come from, auditioning and getting into a position is a feat, period. But what I started to realize were the comments that I would get when I was on trial weeks, or the comments I would get from even audition notes I've gotten have been questionable. Things people have said to me when I was playing in the orchestra, or for a long time I was very, very silent in a lot of things. And there was a whole, I mean, if people saw a Bloomberg interview, as far as like I spoke about, there was an incident of a colleague who was not very happy with me being there, and this resulted in that person had to be dismissed, and there were, you know, orders of protection put on this person because there were violent, you know, things threatening nature being put out there. So I've had quite a weird, almost fantastical, you know, ascend in this field, and the reason why I it's always hard for me to answer about myself. It's because I don't want that to be another story for someone else. I want it to be Titus or whoever else went to Cleveland, went to Juilliard, had some difficulty in auditions, now on the job, tenured, now they're in the orchestra. I want boring Black stories. Boring. And yes, my story may be like, whoa, how did he do that? How is this and the other? And I always ask, like, even when a lot of times I'm on many interviews, they say, how was your experience as a Black musician? And it's almost known that there's something else that's there. That's the part that we have to adjust to get. Why does Titus have a story along with other Black musicians who have this story? How do we get rid of that issue? And that is usually what it has meant to me as far as my ascent in this field, is pushing back on that. It's making sure that we dispel all those issues, make sure the auditions are actually fair. Not where someone can be combed over, or some bully on the committee speaks over everyone else and say, my opinion, I have the best taste. You know, we really have a real process, which makes it accessible for people to be in these positions. And I do think, even in my case, I had many unanswered questions, like one of my colleagues had. So it does mean a lot to me. It means a lot to me that people are looking up to me. And I did come from a very musical family, and I have some of the best mentors, and I love all my teachers who always advocated for me. I mean, they just saw my talent. To tell you the truth, my teachers just saw my talent. They were just like, you know what, Titus is good. Let's push for him. I never had any weird rubs with my teachers, my personal teachers, anything like that. So I think with that, I've always had advocacy and people who were in my corner. But as far as the field is concerned, and getting into jobs, getting tenure, being equally, treated, I always say that my presence brought about a different reaction in people that some people knew. This colleague could have been there for 10, 12, 15 years, and then Titus shows up and this person is acting funny all of a sudden. And I think those are the issues in which people feel uncomfortable when they start to see the change, because change is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but we're strong enough to deal with those. And I think that we're in a place where we want to pivot things in a new direction.
Fantastic. We got a +1 to boring stories from Black musicians. Just to wrap things up, do you have a favorite piece for oboe by a Black composer? It's a question from Stephen Kaplan.
I actually do. My favorite piece right now is the Six Sketches by Fredo. Is Honorable Sueke. That's his whole name, but he goes by Fredo. So Fredo Music is where you can look him up. Just one word, Fredo Music. I think it's fredomusic.org, or fredomusicinc.com or .org. But Fredo, he wrote a piece that's for oboe, d'amore, and English horn. And in one of the movements, you have to go between the three at different times, and it's quite the feat. But it's a beautiful piece of music. It is incredibly challenging. But that right now is my absolute favorite oboe piece at the moment. So yeah, I would say go out and, I know it's hard to find a d'amore right now, but when things come about, practice it on the oboe, then get a d'amore, make some reads from it, and you'll be fine. But right now, that's my favorite oboe piece.
Fantastic. Titus, I can't thank you enough for your time, for your insights, for your inspiration. I've learned a tremendous amount, as I'm sure has everyone attending and everyone who watches this video after the fact. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Billy. I really appreciate it.
All right, Josh, we can probably stop recording now. And everyone, thank you very much for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing you at more events throughout the week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So without further ado, Titus, much appreciated. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.